So when I first met her, she could barely get out of bed. It seemed all she could do was sit upright and pay attention during the pain program. And what she did 6 months later blew our minds. She went from being essentially bedbound to successfully completing the Beta Breakers race in San Francisco. She did it all on her own, without any medications, with a spine full of hardware, and having been unable to get out of bed for the several years before she attended the program. I still remember her very clearly. She was fairly young. She had a big messy scar on her back where she'd been multiply operated. She had a several level fusion. She was taking high doses of pain medications, and her life had been reduced to really just being in bed. She could hardly get out of bed to go to the bathroom, to bathe herself, or to prepare a meal. She said she was living in bed about 22 out of 24 hours a day. She had been enrolled in a pain program. These programs are functional restoration programs. They're reproduced all over the world. I've worked in a couple of them in Australia and in California. What I've noticed is the recipe is fairly standard and very easily reproducible. That's why they're all over the place, because lots of people have duplicated these programs. They're not magic, but they are effective. So part of the requirement for attending this program is you have to be able to sit up for the duration of the day. You can't recline, you can't lie in bed, you can stand, you can sit, you can move around, but you can't be in bed. So she had actually spent a couple of weeks just trying to build up enough stamina to be able to attend the program. Our clinic was located on the top floor of the building. It was actually 10 stories from the ground floor to our clinic. At the beginning, everybody was allowed to ride in the elevator, but by the end of the program, the expectation was you would be able to walk all 10 flights of stairs. So she shows up on day one, and she looks pretty hopeless. In fact, all of us didn't think that she would make it through the entire program. As I said, she'd been operated on multiple times. She was taking large doses of potent medications, and her function was almost zero. But to her credit, she managed to sit through the entire program on day one. Most of it is just education. In the beginning, we're teaching them about pain. We're teaching them techniques that don't involve medication to help control pain. And we begin medication detox. In fact, that's a requirement of the pain program. You have to be willing to detox from medications. Now at this time, medications were very large doses. The medications I typically see patients receiving these days are in the 10, 20, 30 milligram dose range. At that time, doses could range into the thousands of milligrams a day. So many of these patients were taking enormous doses of medications. They'd been on them for a long time. They were completely dependent on them, and they were going to withdrawal if they were discontinued. Nevertheless, in order to participate in the program, they had to discontinue medications. And so we began opiate detox and detox from other medications if you were on a benzodiazepine, and even anti-neuropathic and antidepressant medications. We began the detox on day one. Usually by the end of the first week, many of the participants were in withdrawal. And it sounds cruel to do this, but what we learned over years and years and years of running these programs is without medication detox, you can't really accomplish much else. And it's at detox that most of these people run into trouble. It's a miserable experience to be in opiate withdrawal. We didn't withdraw them unsafely, but we did withdraw them rapidly. And so imagine going from 1,000 milligrams of morphine a day to 0 milligrams of morphine over a 3 to 4 week period. Now imagine you can barely get out of bed, and you're required to not only sit up for the entire 6-hour program every day, plus breaks and lunch, but you have to participate in a structured physical therapy program. And the program gets more and more intense with each passing day. So on day 1, you're just sitting in a chair. On day 2, you're required to sit and stand. Day 3, you have to start walking. Day 4, now you're starting to do some concerted exercise, perhaps going upstairs. By the end of a month, pretty much everybody is walking up and down the 10 flights of stairs. It's really pretty dramatic to watch. And what's especially interesting to watch is how attitudes change. People go from saying, I can't, to maybe I can, to I will. And as the medications start to get reduced, they start to get more focused, they start to get more involved, and they start to get more hopeful. You see people coming in on day 1 with a look of dread in their face, and by the end of the first month, they're smiling, they're laughing, they're having a good time. They're not complaining about walking up and down the stairs. They just do it as a matter of course because that's part of participating in the program. All of these patients look the same. They either succeed, they discontinue their medications and they manage to do the physical activities, or they quit. And I've never seen anything in between. Most of the time, because this is set up for encouragement and for success, and because all of the participants are encouraging each other, people are successful. But this particular patient went on to do far more. At the end of the program, we have a little celebration, and we do keep up with them over time. And this one sticks out in my mind because she continued with aggressive escalation in activity. She started walking long distances, then she started jogging, then she started running. And as I said at the beginning of this video, she went on to do Beta Breakers. Now Beta Breakers is only 7 or 8 miles long, but imagine what it must have been like to start out being bedbound and moving on to being able to complete that sort of an activity. And she continued. She started taking up half marathons. She continued her exercise program. She never relapsed with her medications, and she had all kinds of reasons to have pain. She also looked the most hopeless of the entire group at the start of the session. And she's a poster child for me for what medication reduction and physical activity can do for people. And that's how I came to formulate my opinion about how best to manage chronic pain. And don't assume that your pain is the worst pain or that nobody understands what's going on, because I've seen some extremely crippled people go on to become incredibly functional over time, just following those 2 basic rules. Get up, get moving, increase your physical activity and stamina, and reduce your medications, because they don't just impair the way you think or your basic motor function, they impair your motivation. They limit what you are able to do. They wind up being a barrier to success rather than helping you achieve it. The bottom line is, even if you can't even get out of bed, you have to start somewhere. She started by just sitting up in a chair. It's the same thing we do for patients that have been injured and are hospitalized. We get them up, we get them in a chair. Then after they're able to sit up for a period of time, we have them stand. Then after they're able to stand, we have them walk. And from walk, we have them pick up distance and intensity. You don't have to go on to run a marathon. But you have to start by asking yourself, are you satisfied with your present level of function? And if you're not, are you willing to make a change? I'm Dr. C. Thanks for watching. Please check out the links below if you need further information.